What's up, fellas? It's your boy Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your guy on Twitter at MMA LOTN, and we are back for the second edition of the MMA DFS show on my guy Sal Vetri's channel. Shout out to Sal as always. Yeah, the first one was a success. It came together on relatively short notice, and I was happy to get the content out for you guys, and happy to see the reception that it got as well too. So shout out to all the fellas that were supporting your boy. Everybody hopping on the Lock of the Night train as well now too. Big thank you to you guys for sure. It is true warm welcome for that first edition, but we're right back at it. Now we got 8 straight weekends of events coming up right now, starting with this weekend with UFC Vegas 18, headlined by Alistair Overeem and Alexandre Volkov. Great heavyweight fight, and we got a ton of great fights on the undercard as well. This entire week has been crazy in terms of dropouts, late replacements, and normally what me and Sal were scheduling this to come out for is usually Thursday afternoon. However, which would mean I would record on Wednesday evenings, but we still didn't get salaries for the 3 new fights that we got booked. Thankfully, they came out earlier today, so I'm sitting my butt down and getting this info out to you guys now, and hopefully you guys are able to get to it as soon as possible. First and foremost, just going to plug myself real quick. Again, Twitter at MMALOTN. I'm on the IG as well too, in case you guys are on the IG game, MMALOTN on there. And then obviously my own YouTube channel where I drop my own podcast every Monday from a betting perspective. Again, all the DFS stuff is going to be here, but in terms of betting stuff, it's all going to be on my own channel, MMALOTN, on YouTube as well. Sal will be putting the links to all that stuff in the description below. Lastly, I do want to plug my Patreon as well too. Again, it's all betting related stuff. You guys get a best bets and props article, early access to my breakdowns whenever I drop those. As soon as I finish recording them, I throw them up on my Patreon. There's a solid Discord channel in there with a solid community. And yeah, we're close to the 210 to 220 Patreon mark right now. And again, it's only $5 a month, super cheap, and very, very helpful, insightful, and a great community on there as well too. So shout out to everybody. Secondly, I want to give a big shout out to our sponsor for the show, Monkey Knife Fight. I talked about them last week. I believe I cashed the under on the McGregor significant strikes, even though he was the one that ended up getting knocked out. And then the other pick that I gave you guys was Ottman Azatar. Obviously, we know the shenanigans he got himself into and didn't end up competing that night. So we only got one of those. But I do have another one for you guys at the end of the show here. Remember, the promo code is UFC50. And again, Monkey Knife Fight, it's a player prop site. So for UFC specifically, they give you a number that you got to hit for over-unders for significant strikes or for total fantasy points. And yeah, it's a very fun, creative game and a good spin on the whole DFS world. And I'm a big fan of it too. And once again, if you guys sign up using the promo code UFC50, you guys will get 100% match all the way up to $50 on your initial deposit. Again, the link is in the description below. Check it out. Great site. Huge fan of them. I'm definitely going to be following them a little bit more and giving you guys some tips. Again, if you guys watch to the end of the show, I'll give you guys my 2 spots for Monkey Knife Fight for this upcoming week. And hopefully both of them stay intact so you guys can actually tell both of them. But we'll see what happens. So stay tuned to the end of the show. All right. Let's get the show on the road. Let's get into the breakdowns. That's what you guys are here for, and I'm happy to break them down for you guys. I'm going to be talking about this card a lot throughout the week, so I'm going to do my best to make sure I hit all of my points that I want to get to for this card. So let's start off right at the bottom of the card. We got actually, you know what? The order of the card has been flip-flopping so much because with all the changes. We literally had, I think, 3 or 4 changes within the last 48 hours. So that's something to keep in mind. All right, so the first fight on the card, according to Tapology, that's my holy grail when it comes to MMA stuff. We got Ode Osbourne against Jerome Rivera. This is a short notice fight as well. We had Ode Osbourne originally scheduled to fight Dennis Bondera, who was a UFC newcomer, and he was a minus 170 favorite in that fight. Here we got Ode Osbourne now coming in as the favorite. I believe he is what's his price tag at? They got him coming in at 7,800, and we got Jerome Rivera at 7,500. So I'm siding with Jerome Rivera here, as I believe that there's too many question marks out there regarding Ode Osbourne. He's a guy that goes out there and he still has, his last 6 fights have only gone in the first round, only ended in the first round. He's 4-2 in that stretch, getting finished twice, and then obviously finishing his opponents twice as well. But my question is, when fights get pushed further and they get into the second and third rounds, how does this guy look? So the question marks regarding him are a little bit too much for me right now to really go out there and and invest in this guy. At least from a betting perspective, I have question marks about him. He could be live for a first round finish here. Jerome Rivera did get knocked out by Tyson Nam about 2 fights ago, but he showed solid durability in his last fight against the brother of the flyweight champion. We got Francisco Figueiredo in that fight, who seemed to be throwing with a little bit of heat himself too, but I was a little bit let down with what we saw from Jerome Rivera in that fight. So this fight, all in all, is a very big question mark for me, because I feel like Jerome Rivera has more skills that we've seen than we've actually seen from him in his last 2 fights. Again, his first round against Tyson Nam was as picture perfect as you could in terms of doing damage, winning a round, and not getting knocked out by a guy like Tyson Nam, who hits very, very hard. And then unfortunately for him, in that second round, he runs into a bomb, gets knocked out there. I'm not sure if Osbourne is going to have that power to put him out right away. Most of his victories have been coming via submission, and Jerome Rivera, I think, credentially is a better jiu-jitsu player at this point in time. So I think that's going to be an intriguing aspect in terms of how this fight plays out. I'm so stumped in terms of how to play it. My pick is Jerome Rivera. I think he's going to go the full 15 minutes and kind of outpoint Ode. I hate to assume, but we've only seen Ode Osbourne go to a decision twice in his pro MMA career. He won a split decision and then he lost a unanimous decision, but I just don't have access to that footage. So it's a little bit hard for me to come to a conclusion in terms of whether this guy's gas tank is any good. Because if this fight gets stretched, it's going to get a little bit iffy. He could be live for a first round finish, but I'd be surprised if he submitted a guy like Jerome Rivera, who's pretty crafty on the ground himself. So I'm going to be forced to side on the Jerome Rivera side. I think he wins this fight via decision, probably just racks up a bunch of significant strikes, some good points. I'm not 100% sure how effective he'll be from a DFS point of view. You know what I mean? This could be a very close fight either way. So I don't mind people even potentially... I don't want to say stack this fight again. The only fight that I would ever consider stacking is a 5-round main event, because you have 25 minutes for both guys to go out there and rack up points, an extra 10 minutes over anybody else on the card, right? So yeah, in terms of a pick, I'll go with Jerome Rivera here. I think he wins by decision, but very, very big question marks regarding this fight for sure. All right, let's move along to the next one. We got Youssef Zalal versus Seung Choi. In terms of salaries here, we got Zalal coming in at 9,100, and we got Choi coming in that 7,100 range. Another one kind of put together relatively short notice. I believe Choi was initially scheduled to fight. Who was he supposed to fight? I'm not sure why it's escaping me at this point in time, but he was scheduled to fight somebody else. In steps Youssef Zalal, who wants to get back on track. He lost his initial fight to Seung Choi was fighting another UFC newcomer in Colin Anglin, but Youssef Zalal coming off a loss to Ilia Topuria, who in my opinion, a top 5 fighter waiting for his opportunity. He just needs to fight a little bit more, and we'll see that this guy is a high level, and Youssef Zalal shouldn't really hang his head too low, especially losing to a guy like that. But Zalal went out there last year, made his debut in February at UFC 248, I believe it was, pulled off a win as an underdog against Austin Lingo, and was able to put together a 3-fight winning streak in the UFC before running into Ilia Topuria back in October. Now, I think he's truly set on getting back onto his winning ways here against Seung Choi, who seems to have a solid Muay Thai advantage. The guy's pretty big for the division as well, too. So that's something people need to look at as well. But I also think that the historical data on Seung Choi is very much skewed, because his first 2 fights in the UFC were against very, very tough opponents. You got a guy in Movsar Evloev who could be fighting for a title in the next year and a half. And then you have Gavin Tucker, who's a great fighter himself too. He does pick up a victory over Suman Mokhtarian in his last fight, but I truly believe that Suman Mokhtarian was one of the worst fighters ever in the UFC. So the fact that Choi wasn't able to get him out of there gives me a little bit of pause. I feel like if Seung Choi really is as good as people are making him out to be, he should have finished a guy like Suman. So again, here against Youssef Zalal, I do think the odds are wide from a betting perspective. I think 9,100 on Youssef is a little bit too crazy as well. I think that this is going to be a little bit more of a challenging fight for him compared to anything that we've seen him go up against in the past. The last time we saw Youssef Zalal go out there and fight, I just want to give you guys the numbers correctly. His fight with Jordan Griffin is the one that kind of stands out to me. I'm just trying to pull up the points here. There we go. Against Jordan Griffin, he got 68.7 points. You know what I mean? His win over Peter Barrett, he got 94.6 points. That's another fight. Just like Choi against Mokhtarian, a lot of people are expecting Zalal to finish Peter Barrett. Austin Lingo, he puts up about 88 points. I'm expecting it to look closer to the Jordan Griffin fight, where he lands maybe in the mid-60 range in terms of points, because this is going to be a much tougher fight for him than the odds currently suggest. I wouldn't suggest parlaying Zalal at that minus 240 range, as I believe that Choi will give him a little bit of issues on the feet, but I think it ultimately comes down to the takedowns of Zalal and mixing it up from an MMA perspective rather than just trying to go out there, outmaneuver and outwork this guy. I think he's really going to have to lean on takedowns, as I think that Choi can make it very, very difficult for him in the clinch and in the stand-up realm if that's where they choose to strike or play out this fight. I don't bang on anybody that wants to go out there and take a shot on Choi. I think he is a live underdog. I think he's one of the liver dogs, especially in DFS as well, at the lower price range, at that 7,100 mark. I don't think he's a bad shot there. I expect this fight to go the full 15 minutes. So I do expect the significant strikes to start to add up here. And in terms of what we've seen from Choi in terms of points from the past, his one fight against Sulman Mokhtarian, he put up 103 points. So yeah, obviously his fights against Tucker and Evloev, he goes 24-24 there. But again, very, very tough stylistic matchups for him. Here, you're getting Zalal, who can mix in the takedowns, but he doesn't have a good, as good of a takedown game as a guy like Movsar Evloev, right? So this could be a close fight. You'll see when I get to my Fate of the Night segment later that I'm not the highest on Zalal in this spot, but I do think Zalal wins. But I think it's going to be a much tighter fight than we'll see the odds and the salaries suggest as well too. All right, let's keep things moving along. We got Molly McCann against Lara Procopio. In terms of salaries, we got Molly McCann coming in at 8,500 and Lara Procopio coming in around 7,700. Yeah, 7,700. Now, this is a solid dog spot in my opinion. I really like Lara Procopio on the spot. It's pretty much a striker versus grappler. But if people strictly focus on the last thing that they saw regarding Lara Procopio, which was her fight against Karol Rosa, who also fights later on this card, they're not going to be as turned on to her in terms of thinking that she's going to be a live dog. Now, let's take into consideration that even in a loss where she got outstruck by her opponent, she was still able to go out there and put up 168 strikes. In terms of a losing effort and putting up numbers, she still put up 67.5 points for DFS in her last fight against Karol Rosa. And that was a fight that primarily took place on the feet, as I believe that one, she was fighting up a weight class. It was her UFC debut. And three, I do believe that her now being down at 125 pounds, we will see what allowed her to go undefeated on the regional realm, which is closing the distance, initiating the body lock, getting her opponent to the ground, and working her jiu-jitsu. And that's why I think that she's a solid spot here, as I think she will land takedowns. I'm not the biggest believer in Molly McCann's takedown defense. I believe it's only at 33% right now. Again, yeah, people are just going to have this image of Procopio of like her shooting desperation takedowns against Karol Rosa. And then even in that fight, like she's just shooting them from distance and she was already beat up a little bit. Whereas here, I expect her to, maybe play on the feet a little bit. I don't think Molly McCann has the striking of Karol Rosa, nor do I think that she has the knockout power, that would cause Procopio too much trouble. So I expect Procopio to close the distance, get this fight to the ground, add some control time. But I think she's very live for a submission as well too, which is why I think she's one of my favorite dogs on the card as well, as I do think we'll get some finishing points off of her here. Whether it comes in the first round or second round, I'm not 100% sure, but I truly think that she's going to come through as a dog here, and I really like her. Personally, I played her as a bet of mine as well. I got her at plus 140, thought there was a ton of value there, and it seems like the public is starting to see it as well too, as we're starting to see her around that plus 130, plus 125 range. But yeah, I like Procopio here. I don't think Molly McCann is the greatest. A lot of people are riding her coattails after she threw on a singlet and wrestled Diana Belbita to death. But we're talking about Belbita, who has no ground game, no takedown defense whatsoever. And even herself as a striker in her next fight goes out there and takes down a grappler and gets armbarred herself. You know what I mean? Not the greatest thing that you want to see from an opponent. So for Molly McCann to do that to Belbita, and now people thinking that she's this amazing wrestler, I think it's just absolutely crazy. And we obviously saw it in the next fight against Tyler Santos, who just absolutely wrecked her in that fight. Now, I'm not saying that Procopio is going to wreck her to the level of Tyler Santos, as I believe that Santos has much better striking, but I think that Procopio has passable striking, but I think it ultimately comes down to her getting takedowns, which I think she will be successful with. Again, I've seen a lot of body lock trip takedowns that Procopio has completed in the past, and definitely takedowns that McCann has succumbed to in the past as well too. So yeah, I like Procopio. I think she wins this fight via submission. And I think she's a very, very live dog in this spot. All right, let's keep the train moving. We got somebody I just spoke about, Karol Rosa, coming again against Joselyne Edwards. In terms of salaries, we got Karol Rosa coming in at the 8,700 range, and we got Joselyne Edwards coming in at the 7,500 range. Now, this is a great fight. This is a very, very fun fight because Joselyne Edwards is somebody that I'm very high on. However, I think that this is a little bit difficult of a matchup for her. She fought somebody similar last time around in Wu Yanan, and I say similar in terms of a very volume-heavy striker, but I think that Rosa is a little bit more, not a little bit more, a lot more refined than Wu Yanan. Karol Rosa, again, she's had 2 fights now in the UFC, totaling close to 111 points in the first fight, 109 points in the other fight. She's going out there and throwing 200 plus strikes a fight, landing almost 170 or 140, whatever it is, some crazy numbers. She's just absolutely amazing with her volume and her output, and her technique is just amazing as well too, which really allows her to continuously move forward and batter her opponents. And when it comes down to it, I think she's able to get the fight to the ground when she needs to. She's a solid, I believe she's a black belt at this point, if not at worst a brown belt. But I think she has the chops to kind of control Joselyne Edwards if this fight does hit the ground as well too. Now, Edwards seems a little bit more wild. She, a solid Muay Thai striker, likes to use her elbows, very aggressive at times, very offensive guard as well too. But I wonder how that plays into, Karol Rosa's game, who is a very high-level jiu-jitsu player herself as well. I lean Rosa. I don't mind the price tag that she's at in terms of DFS. On the betting side, it's getting a little bit out of whack. Like I was kind of hoping that it would stay around that minus 170 range. However, it's all the way up to minus 220 the last time I saw. But in terms of a DFS spot, I think that she's a solid spot here. You might want to have a little bit of Joselyne Edwards just in case, but I do think that this could be a quintessential Karol Rosa type performance where we see her go out there and just completely outstrike Joselyne Edwards, landing the combinations, ending with vicious leg kicks. Like she's a mean striker, and we've definitely seen her in the last 2 fights. Now we're seeing her against somebody who is a little bit more offensive minded compared to her last 2 fighters, but I still think that we see Karol Rosa go out there and put on a solid striking performance. This could be like a sleeper for fight of the night because of Joselyne Edwards' forward style and her aggressive style, but I think it's going to play perfectly into Karol Rosa's game in terms of her getting lit up and taking home a decision victory. So I think we'll see Rosa land, maybe put up similar points to what we've seen in her past, and put on a solid striking performance and go on to win a unanimous decision. All right. Let's keep the train moving along. Let's move on to our 5th fight. We got Justin Jaynes against Devonte Smith in the main event. Or sorry, not the main event. What am I talking about? Devonte Smith is coming in at 9,200, and the payback on or the comeback on Justin Jaynes is 7,000. In terms of odds, we got minus 300 for Devonte Smith, plus 250 for Justin Jaynes. This is a tricky one because I favor Devonte Smith strictly due to his physical attributes. We're talking about the faster striker, the bigger striker, more explosive, more athletic. Is able to cover range a little bit better. And obviously he was the one preparing to fight this weekend compared to Justin Jaynes, who's coming in on short notice, who asked for this fight to be at a 160-pound catch weight because he wouldn't have been able to make it down to 155 pounds. And then makes it, there's just so many factors to take into consideration here. The last time we saw Justin Jaynes come in on short notice was his UFC debut against Frank Camacho, where he knew, okay, I don't have that much of a gas tank. Let me go out there and just empty it real quick. If I knock this guy out, great. If I don't, at least I get another shot in the UFC. That's what he's probably coming into this fight with. You know what I mean? That mentality of going out there and just going balls to the wall. Now I can work against him, and he could be the one sleeping and getting knocked out. But it could pay off for him too against a Devonte Smith who's coming back after a knockout loss, where he was coming in as like a minus 1,000 favorite. Absolutely insane knockout by Kama Worthy that night. But he's had a long time off now. Maybe he's recovered enough. But Justin Jaynes, you got to give it to him. The guy still throws a bunch of heat. He just has a huge reach disadvantage to overcome here. Again, a speed and strength disadvantage that he has to overcome. And then obviously the short notice nature of this fight. Now, Devonte Smith could be that slate breaker. You know what I mean? He could be that guy that gets knocked out in that first and does not live up to that 9,200. But then again, he could live up to that 9,200 and get that first round knockout himself too. Now, the two finishes that Justin Jaynes did succumb to in his fights in the UFC were a knee to the body by Gabriel Benitez last time around, and then before that, he got his gas tank was absolutely drained in that Gavin Tucker fight, and then Tucker took full advantage of it, rocked him, dropped him, and then finished him via submission. So we've never seen Justin Jaynes actually put clean out in the UFC, which could be a little bit of a concern here. Maybe he is durable, like his chin could take some shots, and maybe he catches Devonte Smith on a counter here, and that's my concern here. That's why I'm like, ooh, like Devonte, he could be on the winning lineup. He could be optimal here in terms of just, getting that first round knockout and racking up those big points. But Justin Jaynes could be that guy. Like the last card, UFC 257, had how many underdogs come through? You know what I mean? And Justin Jaynes, I'm the biggest Justin Jaynes fader out there. You know what I mean? I lock of the night played both of the last guys against him, and thankfully it worked out for me. But this one, I just have this crazy feeling about it. So I'll take Devonte Smith, but with absolute caution here, as I do think that Justin Jaynes could absolutely put this guy's lights out. Like, all he has is just winging hooks, moving forward, crashing forward, knowing he's going to have to get hit on the way in. But Jaynes could put this guy's lights out. That's what leaves me concerned here. So if you are one of those guys that builds like 150 lineups or something like that, I would highly recommend putting Justin Jaynes in a couple of them, as I believe that he could spring an upset. He has the power to spring the upset. He's done it in the past, and Devonte Smith has a lot of question marks still. But yeah, I expect whoever wins this fight to put up a bunch of numbers. So it would be nice to kind of be covered on both sides. You might want to have a little bit more of Devonte Smith and Jaynes, but I'm strictly siding with Jaynes because I feel like he's going to be faster to the punch. He could be the bigger power puncher, his range should help him in this aspect as well too. From a betting perspective, though, I'd just take the under 1.5 and call it a day. That's about it. But I'll go with Devonte Smith to win this fight via first round knockout. All right, let's keep it going. We got Timur Valiev against Martin Day, another fight that got put together on very short notice. We got Timur Valiev coming in at 9,300 and Martin Day coming in at 6,900. In terms of odds, I think we got about minus 350, minus 370 for Timur Valiev, and plus 310 for Martin Day. Now, I think that this is a walk in the park type of fight for Timur Valiev. I think this is a fight where we see him go out there and pretty much win this fight in any way that he wants. I'm not sure if he'll 100% finish this guy, as I feel like we'll see him be a little bit more cautious given the fact that he got knocked out last time. But I think if anything, we'll see him be cautious due to playing it safe, but also to kind of maintain his gas tank, because that truly is the reason that I think he got knocked out. Like, if you guys remember his fight with Trevin Jones, goes out there, hurts him to the body and literally throws everything, including the kitchen sink, at this guy, and is still not able to pull him out. And you see him really huffing and puffing, really starting to take deep breaths, and that's where he kind of just, I think that's at the point that he lost his fight, is where, his gas tank was compromised. Trevin Jones saw it. He took advantage of it, landed a good shot, and followed up with some punches there. That's not Valiev's style. Like, Valiev is normally a guy that's able to go out there and grind these guys out. He's able to go out there and, win decisions. He is a winner. He's a winner via decision. He has a couple finishes on his record as well, too. But normally you see him go out there and grind guys out. He's not a guy that just overexerts himself trying to finish somebody. Maybe he got a little bit overzealous against Trevin Jones last time around. It was his UFC debut. Saw an opening, he went balls to the wall, never paid off for him. Now, for people that don't watch the sport as closely, that fight isn't technically on his record anymore, as the fight got changed to a no contest as Trevin Jones popped for marijuana leading into that fight. Let's take into consideration the fact that Trevin Jones took that fight on very short notice, so I'm sure the guy was probably baked when he signed the contract. But can you blame the guy? I feel sorry for him because I think he got a bonus that night, but he's not eligible for it anymore because he failed a test. Regardless, I think that Timur Valiev styles on Martin Day here. I'll talk about Martin Day real quick here. The guy's a skilled striker, very technical striker, but makes a lot of bad decisions in the cage. The one fight that I want to bring up is his fight against Davy Grant, which is 2 fights ago. I believe it was in July when they initially were on Fight Island. And doing a good job against Davy Grant, but Davy Grant's landing the same goddamn combination on him for about 13 and a half minutes, up until the point that he lands the same combination at that 13 and a half minute mark and knocks Martin Day out. Martin Day does nothing in that amount of time to adjust to that, and he succumbs to the knockout there. Then in his next fight, gets taken down by Anderson Dos Santos, gets back to his feet, but for some reason decides to do a ridiculous slam where he just picks him up over his head, leaving his chin or his neck completely exposed, and we see the black belt in Anderson Dos Santos snatch up his neck and take home a guillotine victory. So Martin Day, I think he's doing a favor for the UFC here in terms of just taking this fight so that he can, maybe save his job or get back onto the winning track. But this is a very, very bad stylistic matchup for him. I don't see him knocking out Timur Valiev. I think people might be reading into Valiev getting knocked out last time around a little bit too much, and I think they're overlooking the fact that the guy was just absolutely gassed trying to finish this guy, which is almost a common theme with other fighters on this card, which I'll get into later. But I think that Valiev is a winner. This is a fight that will definitely allow him to get that victory as well. Does he finish Day? Not 100% sure. He is live for a finish, and I think he has optimal opportunity to live up to his price tag as well here. So I wouldn't mind people, having to dig a little bit lower, because I think that there are a solid amount of dogs here that you could supplement and actually take Valiev at that high number. But yeah, I think that Valiev is going to be a high scorer here, and I think he runs through Martin Day. I'll go by decision just to be on the safe side, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him go out there and pull off a submission either. So I got Valiev to win this fight via decision. All right, next up we got Mike Rodriguez versus Danilo Marques. In terms of salaries, we got Mike Rodriguez coming in at 9,000 and Danilo Marques coming in at Danilo Marques is coming in. Why can't I find this guy's name? Danilo, where you at? Do they even have him listed? There he is, 7,200. So this is an intriguing one because there's a lot of people out there trying to go out there and discredit a guy like Mike Rodriguez and saying he's not, he's not trustworthy and this and that. I just need to wet the whistle. All right. Yeah, there's a lot of people trying to discredit him. He's 1-3 in his last 4 fights. Now let's just break down those fights real quick here. The first one, John Allen. Sauced to the tits, Mr. John Allen. We got popped by USADA pretty much right after that fight. But John Allen, solid all-around MMA fighter. Not the greatest at one specific discipline, but is able to do a good job of just mixing pretty much every single martial art together and just put on a pace on a guy, especially if he's on the sauce, right? So he loses that fight. The Da Un Young fight. That's 2 light heavyweights going out there throwing leather at each other. One of them is going to get knocked out. Unfortunately for Mike Rodriguez, it was him that night. Then his Marcin Prachnio fight. That's where we see the true potential of Mike Rodriguez, where he's the one able to get his power shots off. It clinches up perfectly with Marcin Prachnio, and just elbows him to death, gets a finish there, racks up 110 points there. Then his last fight against Ed Herman, finishes this guy twice. Now, I'm not blaming Ed Herman or the referee or whatever happened there, because just to give a quick breakdown for people that don't know what happened in that fight, Mike Rodriguez hits him to the body with a beautiful shot, clearly to the body. The referee thinks it's a nut shot. So what does Ed Herman do? The veteran, the savvy veteran himself, he plays it up. He's like, he's holding his cup and he's touching it. And Mike Rodriguez is like, what are you talking about? I hit him to the body. And then he doesn't create enough of a stink about it, in my opinion. You clearly see it in the replays, but Ed Herman takes his time, gets his wits back about him, gets back into the fight. That's in the second round. So Mike Rodriguez goes on. They go into the third round, gets Ed Herman down again and starts smashing him again. There are a ton of referees that probably would have stopped that fight, given the amount of damage that Ed Herman was taking at that point in time. The referee wants to see a dead body, apparently. Lets that fight continue. And then Mike Rodriguez, just like Timur Valiev in the fight that I was talking about before, absolutely gasses himself out trying to finish this guy. In my opinion, he finished him twice. Unfortunately, the fights continue to go on. Ed Herman, the vet himself, survives it all, snatches up a Kimura of his own, reverses the position on Mike Rodriguez and gets the victory there. So there's a lot of asterisks with Mike Rodriguez's game. Now, the asterisks on Danilo Marquez's side is that There are none. The guy just sucks. Like, I hate being so forward about a fighter and just being so dismissive of a fighter, but this guy just, it's very tough watching this guy fight. So he's 35 years old. He's 35. He just turned 35 in December. He's coming off a victory over Khadisi Bragimov. In my fight, I'm going to be saying it all week. That was a fight to determine who the worst fighter in the UFC was. Unfortunately for Khadis, it was Khadis that night. I think he got cut out from the UFC after that. But Danilo, mainly known as the jiu-jitsu guy in Shogun Hua's corner in his last couple fights. But then again, when's the last time we've seen Shogun Hua pull off any jiu-jitsu moves? And then also a black belt under Damian Maia. Again, I think that's a huge discredit to Damian Maia's ranking system. But the guy does not look comfortable on the feet. He's a big dude. I'll give that to him. He's a tall dude. He's 6'6", 77.5-inch reach. But he's a grappler. He wants to get this fight to the ground and he wants to use his jiu-jitsu. But when you see him take the fight to the ground, he's not good. Like, his grappling is horrible. He's having large amounts of trouble trying to finish guys on the regional scene who are like 0-3, 5-9. He lost to a guy that was 6-6. You know what I mean? His second last fight before coming to the UFC was beating a guy that was 0-16. Like, come on. What is this bullshit? Over 4 years ago, he fought a guy named Myron Dennis. Longtime UFC fans will remember him for being on The Ultimate Fighter. The guy's a kickboxer himself too. But that was a weird fight where we didn't see Myron really overextend on his punches too much in terms of trying to knock this guy out, as I believe he probably could have. However, I think we'll see Mike Rodriguez complete that. I really like Mike Rodriguez in this spot. I think he's very live for a first-round knockout as well too. I think he's going to go out there and absolutely dummy this guy. His clinch is nasty. His kicks are nasty. The fact that they're going to be fighting in opposite stances here, I think, is a big thing. I believe Rodriguez is the one coming in a southpaw stance, and we got Danilo Marques in the orthodox stance. So you bet Mark Rodriguez is going to be tearing up that lead leg and that body of Danilo here, and I think it eventually leads to a finish for Rodriguez. So I like Rodriguez here. I'm trying to wrap my head around why people would be playing Danilo, but I get it. Like, if he does somehow get top control, sure. But I don't know. I just don't think that Rodriguez is as bad as people are making him out to see and saying that he's untrustworthy. Like, it's been very shitty situations that he's been a part of in his last couple of fights, especially if he realistically actually finished at Herman that night, he'd be coming in as like a -400, -500 favorite on this fight. You know what I mean? So there's always little things that make these small adjustments to other people. But I got Mike Rodriguez here to win via knockout first round. I think he's going to be scoring high for sure, and I think he's going to be worthy of that price tag as well. All right, next up we got Michael Johnson versus Clay Guida. You want to talk about untrustworthy fighters? Michael Johnson is suspect numero uno. So Michael Johnson is coming in with a price tag of 8,800. And we got Clay Guida coming in at 7,400. In terms of the odds, I think we've been seeing a little bit of action on Clay Guida as of late, but we got -225 on Johnson, +185 on Guida. Now, I'm siding with Guida here, but again, it's a very low confidence pick because both guys could absolutely shit the bed here. With Clay Guida, when he goes out there and wins, like the last time he won against BJ Penn, he put up 81 points. Against Joe Lozon, puts up 112 points. Eric Cope, 92 points. But then when he's losing, obviously, putting up 33 points against Bobby Green last time around. But I think this is a fight that he can go out there and get the takedowns against Michael Johnson, grind him out against the cage, not allow Johnson to get comfortable enough to really get his striking going. Because that's Michael Johnson's bright spot, you know what I mean? Like, he is the most talented fighter with a 19-16 record, easily. The guy's hands are amazing. He's very methodical with his striking, but he just has these moments and times where he just has a slip-up, has a brain fart. You know what I mean? His last fight against Thiago Moises goes out there and lights this guy up for the first 5 minutes, and then within 26 seconds of the next round gets heel hooked. What? Stevie Ray fight. He gets grapple fucked for the entire third round by a striker. I don't know how you can trust a guy like Michael Johnson. He could absolutely come out here and look like a -500 favorite and dead Clay Guida in that first round, but it's very, very hard to trust this guy. So, to have a little bit of Michael Johnson on your lineups, I understand it. But Clay Guida could absolutely rack up some numbers here as well in terms of, control time, getting fight to the ground, maybe racking up a couple of significant strikes as well too. But this is a very, very tough fight. I'd say this one and the Ode Osbourne and Jerome Rivera fights are the toughest ones to call for me. But I do like Clay Guida to win this fight via decision. Again, very, very low confidence pick. You guys are banging on me to give you guys a pick, and unfortunately, I got to give you guys Clay Guida, but I just can't trust Michael Johnson at this point. Next up, we're moving on to the main card. We got a banger of a fight here. We got Diego Ferreira versus Beneil Dariush. I'm very, very excited, very excited for this fight. Easily the people's main event, as I like to call it. These guys did fight, I believe, over 6 years ago now, where Beneil Dariush did get the better of him. It was the third fight for Carlos Diego Ferreira. Not to mention, Diego Ferreira was self-taught pretty much at that point. He was his own head coach. Didn't really lean on any other training camps or anything like that to get solid advice or anything like that. And he was undefeated coming into the UFC. So why fix what's not broken, right? That's probably what he was thinking. But when you saw him in the Beneil Dariush fight, you saw he needed to fix it because it was definitely broken after that. And what did he do after that fight? Goes out there, joins camps with Fortis MMA. And the more you guys watch me, the more you guys know that I'll bring up that team's name, as I feel like they're one of the more unheralded MMA gyms in the country or in the world. Head coach Saif Sayoud is an absolute monster. He's doing such good work with a lot of his fighters. He really allowed Uriah Hall to change his game and make him a more confident fighter and comfortable fighter. And I think he's doing the exact same thing here with Diego Ferreira, who's a very skilled fighter himself too. Now, we saw in their first fight, Beneil Dariush was able to control him, really shut down his game, whereas Diego Ferreira, on the other end, he looked a little bit uncomfortable on the feet, mainly a jiu-jitsu guy at that point in time, but he just, he looked stiff. He did not look comfortable on the feet at all. Now, fast forward 5 years, and the guy looks amazing. He's on a 6-fight winning streak, absolutely just out-pressuring and outpacing guys, staying in their face, not allowing them to get their game off. And I think that's very crucial here for him against Beneil Dariush. Again, we also see him very comfortable on the feet now too, hopping around a little bit more, changing stances, throwing combination, throwing head kicks, not really relying too much on his BJJ black belt, other than his fight against Anthony Pettis, which was a glaring flaw that he could take advantage of, and he absolutely did take advantage of it there. But he's going out there and outstriking guys like Mirbek Taisumov, who in my opinion was at that time a very high level guy that a lot of people are thinking had championship potential himself too. I do want to quickly just pull up historically what Beneil Dariush, or sorry, not Beneil Dariush, but what Diego Ferreira has been putting up in terms of numbers during the streak. So he got knocked out by Dustin Poirier, and since then beats Olivier Aubameyang, puts up 81 points, beats Jared Gordon, knocks him out in a minute and 58 seconds, racks up 60 strikes thrown and knocks him out in a minute and 58 seconds, racks up 112 points. Knocks out Kyle Nasser in the second round, racks up 110 points. Decisions, Rustam Khabilov gets 65 points, but does a really good job in that fight in terms of nullifying the takedowns that were coming his way, as well as just staying in this guy's face and just making him uncomfortable. Mirbek Taisumov racks up 75 points, and then Anthony Pettis obviously finishes him. I believe that was the first round finish, if I'm not mistaken. Might have been early second round, but yeah, racks up 106 points there. I'm expecting closer to that 75 to 85 point range for Diego Ferreira here. I think it's going to be a great fight back and forth, but my concern here would be the game plan that Beneil tries to implement at this point in time. Like, we've seen a Jekyll and Hyde type of thing with Beneil as of late. So he himself is on a 5-fight winning streak, racking up 105 points against Thiago Moises, where he grapple fucked him for 15 minutes. The Drew Dober fight where he submitted him. Frank Camacho fight, he submitted him. Jakar Close, absolutely amazing fight, knocks him out in the second round. And then the Scott Holtzman fight knocks him out as well too. It's weird, the evolution of Beneil Dariush we've seen is just like, after he got knocked out by Alexander Hernandez, he goes out there and plays the fight as safely as possible by just out-grappling Thiago Moises. I think he accrued over 13 minutes of control time in that fight. And then the Drew Dober fight, doesn't mind striking a little bit, eventually submits him. Was having some trouble on the feet there, but we do know what Drew Dober's currently been on, so he's a very skilled fighter himself. The Jakar Close fight and the Scott Holtzman fight could have easily have gone the other way too, in terms of he was just throwing caution to the wind. Luckily for him, he was the one that was able to be durable enough to take the shots and then eventually knock out his opponents. I wonder how that's going to work here against a guy like Beneil. Now, Beneil only been knocked out by Dustin Poirier. Statistically, I don't think he's even been knocked down outside of that one fight. He did get hurt a little bit by Mirbek Taisumov, didn't get dropped, got hurt. Same thing against Kyle Nelson, but that was an issue with Kyle Nelson where he came in on short notice, similar to Justin Jaynes when he fought Frank Camacho, comes on short notice, knows he has a compromised gas tank, so let me go put it on this guy as quickly as I can, try to knock him out. If I'm successful, yay. If I'm not, I get another couple cracks. in the UFC regardless, right? So yeah, with Diego Ferreira here, I just love his new style. I think he's going to make it very uncomfortable for Beneil here. If Beneil wants to go out there and throw caution to the wind, I think it's a bad choice, as I believe we've seen him start to slow down a little bit. But luckily for him, he's still able to go out there and get the finish some of these times. But it's going to be very, very tough against a guy like Diego Ferreira, who's not going to allow him to get set, who's not going to allow him to get comfortable, and he might be the one going out there and controlling him and grappling him, and just taking home a decision victory. He could possibly be live for a late finish here, depending on what kind of Beneil Dariush we see as well. So I like Diego Ferreira here. Personally, I made a bet on him at -120. I think there's some good value here. Close fight. I will absolutely admit it's a close fight, but I'm going to be leaning with a guy that I've seen more improvements from. Maybe not as fun and chaotic as entertaining as a guy like Beneil Dariush, who's been getting all these crazy knockouts, but he's playing with so much fire in those situations that it's eventually going to catch up to him. Whereas I see the style of Carlos Diego Ferreira being much more safe, much more efficient, and a higher upside of getting a victory and getting your hand raised. So I'll go with Diego Ferreira. I think he'll notch between the 75 to 90 point range. Again, it all depends on Dariush and his approach here. I don't think we'll see Dariush as successful in terms of controlling him like he did in the first fight, as we're now seeing Diego Ferreira much more comfortable in the MMA world. And again, with this newfound skill set that he's obtained since working with Saif Saud, I think it's going to be much more difficult for Benny to get his game going. So I got Dariush to win this fight via decision. And I think, what's he at again? What's his number? We got Ferreira at 8,200, and we got Dariush at 8,000. So, yeah, I think Dariush is not a bad spot at the 8,200. I think he'll live up to his price tag, and he'll give us some solid value there. All right, let's move along. We got Cody Stamann taking on UFC newcomer and short notice replacement in Askar. Askar, this is another one. Like Timur Valiev, I think Cody Stamann is one of those guys that will live up to his price tag, which I believe is one of the highest on the night. Corey Sandhagen is the highest. We got 9,200 on Cody Stamann, and we got Askar Askarov at 6,700. Yeah, I just don't see what Askar has for this guy at all. Like, I'd say Hail Mary knockout, not even that. Like Cody Stamann, never been knocked out in the UFC, has a solid chin of his own, has fought 3 way tougher strikers in his last 3 fights and shown a great chin. Song Yadong, Jimmy Rivera, and Brian Kelleher, in my opinion, all hit way harder than Askar. And Askar's game mainly has been like keeping his opponents on the outside, but he's only going to have a 1-inch height advantage here on Stamann. I think he has a couple inch reach advantage on in terms of the reach, but I don't think it's going to be too much of an issue here for Stamann, who was preparing for a guy that had 10.5 inches already on him in terms of reach. So Stamann's normally the guy at the reach disadvantage, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to him at all because he's a wrestler first. So he's going to be able to hit those takedowns when it comes to him. And he is, in my opinion, one of the better strikers that have a wrestling background. He throws great kicks, great versatility of strikes, doesn't mind mixing it up with like teeps to the leg, great body work as well too. The guy's, in my opinion, is one of the better all-around fighters. And I do think he has like top potential, but he just comes up short against these guys that have him slightly beat in other in aspects of the MMA game. But this Askar guy, I just don't think he has anything here for Cody Stamann. Again, mainly a striker, has shown off a little bit more of his MMA game in his last fight against Kevin Worth. I believe that was back in October or September, I should say. But again, it was a fight where it didn't really show me anything that could go out there and beat a guy like Stamann. He's not going to take Stamann down. He's not going to control Stamann on the ground. And I don't think he's going to knock out Stamann either. So I think Stamann could definitely go out there and put up similar numbers to what we saw when he fought Terrion Ware. I do want to pull that up for you guys real quick. But he fought Terrion Ware, which was his first UFC fight. And that's kind of like the category that I'm lumping Askar into. So when he fought Terrion Ware, he put up 126 points. You know what I mean? I think he'll be able to hit takedowns here. I think he'll be able to control it pretty much everywhere. And we should see him land, closer to the 100 to 110-ish range. I don't know if he'll finish him, but we'll definitely get enough work from him in terms of takedowns, significant strikes, and control time to warrant that high price tag on him. So I got Mr. Cody Stamann to win this fight via decision. Next up, we got Alexandre Pantoja versus Manel Kape. I love this fight. This is a wonderful fight. So Kape's coming in on in his first UFC fight here. Let me just get you guys the salaries real quick. We got Pantoja at 8,300 and Kape at 7,900. I think both guys are live for a finish here. I think the deficiencies that we see on the ground from Kape could be a huge advantage here for Alexandre Pantoja, who's a very high-level black belt himself too. He looks decent in the first round on the feet, but then it seems like cardio starts to catch up to him later in fights. Like he's not as reactive with the striking defense, which could be an issue here when he's fighting a guy like Kape, who's just very quick to the punch, very explosive, has decent power in his hands as well too. And if Askarov is going out there and kind of lighting up Pantoja on the feet in the third round, I think Manel Kape will be very live in doing the same thing and possibly knocking him out as well. So that could absolutely be an issue for Mr. Pantoja here. However, I do think he'll be successful in getting this fight to the ground, and either he gets an early submission, or I think he could at least rack up 2 rounds of control time and then eventually pull off a decision victory if he does end up dropping that third round. But I think he's very live for an early submission here. Again, a high-level black belt. Kape is a brown belt as well, if I'm not mistaken. However, I don't think it shows as much. Like we saw his fight against Lucas Sasaki, who's a former UFC fighter. Actually fought Pantoja as well too. And Pantoja, I believe, I do want to confirm this, but Pantoja went out there and submitted him with relative ease as well too. So that just shows you if you want to do a little bit of MMA math. Not something that I promote, but yeah, he goes out there and submits Lucas Sasaki in 2 minutes. You know what I mean? So I like Pantoja here. I think the UFC bright lights might be a little bit too much for Kape at this point in time, even though he did have some big fights over there in Rizin in Japan. But this is a different beast with the UFC, and obviously a different level of skill that you're going up against as well. So I got Pantoja. I got him to win via first round submission, and I think he's a solid play at that price line as well too. Kape is absolutely live for a knockout finish of his own, so don't be surprised if if this fight does get pushed a little bit later, if Kape does go on to knock him out in the second or third round. All right, let's move on. We got Corey Sandhagen taking on UFC legend Frankie Edgar, and like I said earlier in this episode, highest price tag here is Corey Sandhagen at 9,400, and then we got Frankie Edgar all the way down at 6,800. Now, I see this fight going 15 minutes. And the only reason I say that is I was very, very impressed with the amount of durability that we saw from Frankie Edgar in his last fight against Pedro Munoz. That was a fight where everybody thought it was a foregone conclusion that Pedro Munoz was going to go out there and knock him out. And he didn't. He had 25 minutes. He landed a bunch of significant strikes, but he just was not able to get the job done. And that really, I think, surprised a lot of people. Frankie Edgar ends up getting his hand raised, putting up 94 points in a decision victory, but showed off great durability, great footwork, great movement, and great combinations as well, too, which allowed him to, again, rack up the points and rack up the significant strikes and get his hand raised that night. Corey Sandhagen is a little bit of a different beast, though, because with Pedro Munoz, you're getting a bit of a walking punching bag. Like, he's not a guy that has crazy footwork. He literally just moves forward and just tries to throw bombs and a couple leg kicks here and there because he just doesn't mind getting taken down. Takedown. That's a horrible slip up right there. Either way, with him getting taken down, that's his role. Pedro Munoz is a high-level black belt himself too, has a nasty guillotine, which he's pretty much ready to throw on anybody who tries to try to take him down. So he just resorts to marching forward, no real method to his madness, just trying to knock you out. And unfortunately for him, it didn't work against Frankie Edgar, which is why Edgar was able to just kind of dance circles around him and just land his own shots and get out of the way and get his hand raised. Corey Sandhagen, on the other hand, very unorthodox striker, very unorthodox movement, carries his range very well. Great boxer, great kickboxer, nifty on the ground, even though he got tapped by Aljo 2 fights ago. Aljamain Sterling is just a different monster when it comes to the jiu-jitsu game. Nasty power, nasty grip strength, and it showed it pretty much right off the bat against Corey Sandhagen. Now, that's where the issue lies in terms of the takedown defense of Corey. I think it's very suspect. I think that we'll see Edgar complete a couple takedowns here. However, I think he'll have trouble keeping him down. However, what if he doesn't? What if he does rack up a bit of control time, rack up a little bit of damage on the ground, and possibly steal this fight? So I think he is a bit of a live dog here. I think the line is just a little bit too wide, especially from a betting perspective, because we got minus 400 on Corey Sandhagen, plus 325 on Frankie Edgar, and then obviously the salaries with Frankie Edgar being all the way down at 6,800. I think he could absolutely come through as a solid underdog here and rack up a solid amount of points. Because even when he's going to a decision, like his decision fight against Max Holloway, puts up 46 points. Not too shabby, but It'd be nice if he was able to get the victory there. But also, that was over a 25-minute period. Yeah, I'm trying to justify a reason to think that Corey Sandhagen is going to live up to that 9,400. But I'm skeptical on whether he'll actually finish Frankie here. I think we'll see more so him kind of just pick apart Frankie from the outside, land the better shots from the outside. Finish him, I just don't know. I don't know if we'll get the finish. So I don't know if he'll be able to live up to that 9,400. So that's my question mark here. Obviously, it would be smart to have a little bit of Corey Sandhagen, but also a little bit of Frankie because he's definitely live for a finish here. And as long as his chin holds up, if this fight goes 15 minutes, it's going to be a close fight. It's definitely going to be a close fight. So I'll pick Sandhagen via decision, but I'm not mad at anybody trying to seek value here on Frankie Edgar because I do think he's a solid spot as well too. But I'm going with Corey Sandhagen. I think he's just going to beat him to the punch, land the better shots, and win this fight via decision. All right, that brings us to our main event. We got the 13th fight. It seems like there's a ton of fights on this card, but I do want to get through all of them and give you guys my best take on each one. So here we got Alistair Overeem against Alexander Volkov. In terms of salaries, we got Volkov coming in at the 8,600 range, and we got Overeem coming in at 7,600. In terms of odds, we got minus 200 now for Mr. Alexander Volkov and plus 170 for Overeem. It seems like there's money starting to roll in on Mr. Volkov, and I kind of get it, even though I am picking Overeem to win this fight. Now, a lot of people are banging on the fact that Volkov should be able to go out there and knock out a guy like Alistair Overeem. However, I do want to bring up the fact that I think that the durability thing of Overeem is being a little bit overblown here. The only two guys to truly knock him out on the feet, Jairzinho Rozenstruik and Francis Ngannou. Those two guys alone, in my opinion, are top three knockouts or knockout artists in the heavyweight division. We got Francis Ngannou, we got Derek Lewis, who holds a record for most KO finishes in the UFC, and then we got Jairzinho Rozenstruik, who just punches like a mammoth himself, right? So he's not getting knocked out to those guys. His fight against Curtis Blades gets taken down, ragdoll on the ground, and then just elbowed to just death, pretty much. Beautiful finish from there. But again, not a one-punch knockout or anything like that. Just got absolutely mauled on the ground. And then champion Stipe Miocic, who does a good job in terms of surviving his own onslaught and then finishing via ground and pound later in that fight too. It's been a long time since we saw him got knocked out by Ben Rothwell way back in September of 2014. So we're talking close to 7 years now since he's been like legit knocked out by somebody who's not, touch of death Francis Ngannou or touch of death Jairzinho Rozenstruik. He did get dropped by Walt Harris, but that's kind of Walt Harris's game, where if he's able to get you out of there quick, great. But if he's not, then it starts to catch up to him, and that's how Overeem was able to get through that. So I like the awareness and the durability of Overeem there, where in terms of knowing that he got rocked, but staying active enough to stay out of bad positions, and he eventually, reversed the position, got on top of Walt Harris, and started banging his brains into the canvas. So. So he gives up the first 2 rounds to Augusto Sakai, and then I'm not sure if it was just a gas tank dump for Sakai or Overeem just started hitting those takedowns with more emphasis. But after that 3rd round, that's where we saw Overeem really start to take it to him, and then eventually get that 5th round finish. Now, a statistic I want to throw out for you guys is so the 13 fights that Alistair Overeem had in the UFC leading up to his fight against Curtis Blades, he only completed 3 takedowns. Since then, he's had 5 fights, and he's completed 7 takedowns. So we're seeing a much more refined game in Alistair Overeem, especially 60-plus fights into his MMA career. And considering how much he's seen over his career, it's great to see him at this point of his career still making changes and adding new tools to his toolkit. And it's working out for him for sure. Like in his last 2 fights alone, we're talking about 104 points against Augusto Sakai, 126 points against Walt Harris. Gets knocked out by Jairzinho Rozenstruik with 4 seconds left in that fight. 4 seconds. He almost had that one in the bag. Unfortunately for him, Jairzinho pulls it out there. The Alexo Oleinik night puts up 114 points. Sergey Pavlovich knocks him out. I believe that was the first round, 108 points. So earlier in his career, he's landing when he's winning. He's landing in the 90s, the 50s. Even in one of his fights, that was his Roy Nelson fight. But we're seeing like higher scores from him now because he is implementing that takedown game, getting some control time, landing some significant strikes there, and even finishing these guys later in fights. Volkov is susceptible to getting taken down, obviously. And I'm not just saying that just off of his Curtis Blades fight, because Curtis Blades easily the best wrestler in the heavyweight division, right? So you can't say that Overeem's going to go out there and put on a heavyweight Curtis Blades type pace on him. But we have seen very nifty and crafty takedowns from Alistair Overeem in his last couple fights, and I think that's going to be very important for him here. Another caveat that's coming into this is that last time around with Alexander Volkov, we saw him put on an extra 18 pounds coming in at the heavyweight limit, and a lot of people didn't know what to take away from that. And obviously, he goes out there and finishes Walt Harris. So a lot of people are giving him solid credentials and solid praise for that. Whereas I think it could be a little bit different because, one, I don't rate Walt Harris that high. I think that Walt Harris is a very flawed heavyweight fighter. His best wins are against guys that aren't even in the UFC anymore. And I think that a lot of people might be overblowing that performance from Alexander Volkov. How is that extra weight now going to affect him in a 25-minute fight? Because if he's not able to get Overeem out of there nice and early, I think the fight's going to get dragged on later. I think that extra weight might catch up to him, and we'll see the pace and the pressure and the grinding, the new grinding style of Overeem really start to catch up to him. Like, even if Overeem doesn't get the fight to the ground, he still does a good job of controlling his opponents up against the cage, landing his knees from the clinch position, which are, there were a signature move of him from back in the day, and he's still using it to very high effective levels at this point in time. So yeah, I lean the dog here. I do think Overeem wins this fight. I'm trying to see whether the public's going to push this line to the plus 200 range for Overeem, because I might be forced to make a play there. Yes, I am a little bit concerned about the potential durability issues. In my mind, I think they're a little bit overblown, but I do still have that little bit of reservation on Overeem here. But I do think he still wins this fight. I think he wins via decision, and that prop roughly around that plus 650, plus 700 is very, 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 very appealing for sure. But yeah, I got Overeem here. I think he wins this fight via decision, and I think he's going to be a sneaky play as well in terms of having somebody in the 7,000s that will come through and especially go to a decision. All right, that's the full card breakdown. Hope you guys enjoyed that. I will go through my last little couple segments here. As you guys know, I like to go through my lock of the night, or at least lock of the night in terms of a guy that I'm going to have on the majority of my lineups, my dog of the night, fade of the night, sleeper of the night. I'll also be adding a new quick segment here, whether I think the main event is a stackable main event or not, because that's a question that I've been getting a lot after I did my first episode. And then I'll let you guys know my favorite player in each salary range. And then obviously I'll end off the episode with my monkey knife fight tip of the week. All right, so my lock of the night play, the spot that I like the most is Cody Stamann. Again, I believe he's coming in that 9,200 range. And like I said in the breakdown, I think we're going to see a similar performance to what we saw him against Terrion Ware in his UFC debut, where he put up close to 126 points. I think we'll see him clear that 100-point mark for sure. He's going to live up to his salary here. And yeah, I think that Askar just doesn't have anything for this guy. So yeah, he's definitely worth that change and that 9,200 mark. But I think I fully expect him to go out there and get 100-plus points here against Askar. My dog of the night is going to be Lara Procopio. I think we only have that one sample size in terms of statistics when she fought Karol, but even in defeat, she still went out there and put up 67.5 points, even in a loss. However, I do think that she's very live for a submission victory here against Molly McCann. Even if she doesn't, she's going to be landing takedowns and she's going to be accruing control time. So at her price range, I do think that she's going to be very live here and be a very solid dog play. And that's a spot that I like for a dog. In terms of fate of the night, I think I'm going to be going with Youssef Zalal here, who's at 9,100. I think he's going to have a tough fight against Choi. I expect him to win, but even if he wins, I expect him to maybe score in the 50 to 60 point range. It's going to be tough to really get things going against Choi, who could make it very difficult for him on the feet. And if he's not successful in getting this fight to the ground, Choi might end up looking like the guy that should be 9,100 instead of Youssef Zalal here. But I do think Zalal just grinds on him, maybe doesn't get the most amount of significant strikes or anything off, maybe accrues some decent control time, but I don't expect him to rack up that many points here, especially at that 9,100 range. So I'll go with Youssef Zalal as my fade of the night. My sleeper play of the night. Last time around, I give you guys Marina Rodriguez. She came through for me. She's a person that I actually bet on and actually cashed in on a bunch of props as well too. KO prop, round 2 prop. But this is one, it's a sleeper play of the night, but I don't think he's going to win. But if he does win, I think it would be a very low played fighter, and that's Frankie Edgar. I think he has a ton of upside in terms of getting takedowns, significant strikes, and accruing control time if he's successful in keeping Corey Sandhagen on the ground. But again, even at his price range, 6,800, I think that's a solid spot here. Given anybody else in that price range, I think Frankie Edgar has the best shot to pull off the upset and, give us a solid amount of points. Even in a defeat, I think if this fight goes to the decision, we'll still see him go out there and put up a solid amount of points. So I like Frankie as my sleeper play of the night. Again, I hate giving you guys a sleeper play that I don't think is going to win. But again, I think he has high upside if he does end up winning, especially given the current price tag that he is. So my sleeper play of the night is going to be Frankie Edgar. Stackable main event or not, I think it's a stackable main event. I think we're going to see this go 15 minutes. I think we'll see, there's a small chance, in my opinion, that Volkov will finish him early. But if he's not able to get him out of there early, I do expect this fight to go 15 minutes. I expect Overeem to kind of control him for the majority of it. But we could get some solid strikes out of Volkov as well. Some solid, maybe even a takedown out of him too. But I do think it's a stackable main event that we'll see it go to a decision. The odds don't indicate that it will go to a decision. But personally, just from a capping perspective, I think we will see it go that way. But yeah, yes, I do believe the main event is stackable here. All right. Favorite plays in each range. In the 6,000 range, we only have 3 fighters. We have Askar, Frankie Edgar, and Martin Day. I think the best spot in that is my sleeper, which is Frankie Edgar. In the 7,000s, my favorite play is Alistair Overeem. I think he goes out there and gets a decision victory. Ton of control time, ton of significant strikes, and you're talking about that over 25 minutes. Yeah, I like me some Alistair Overeem. One guy that I will throw out there at 7,000 is Justin Jaynes. Again, I think Devonte Smith knocks him out, but he could absolutely break the slate here if he's the one getting the knockout himself, and he's very, very live for a first-round knockout. Not to mention, if you guys have access to it, Justin Jaynes round 1 plus 600, I think that's a crazy line and worth a little bit of a sprinkle as well too. All right. In the 8,000s, I got Karol Rosa. Maybe not live for a finish here, but I can depend on her to go out there and throw over 200 and something strikes, 260, 280, whatever it is, and land a solid amount of them. In her last 2 fights alone, she's averaging 110 DraftKings points. And I think that she'll come through with another similar performance, maybe land a couple takedowns as well too. But we know we're going to get an output, and we know we're going to get volume out of her, which is why in that 8,000 range, and specifically, she's currently at 8,700. I think we'll get a solid amount of points from her this time around, especially against a very hittable, in my opinion, Joselyne Edwards. So my favorite play in the 8,000s is going to be Karol Rosa. In the 9,000s, we got a couple guys. What do we got? We got Corey Sandhagen, Timur Valiev, Cody Stamann, Devonte Smith, Youssef Zalal, and Mike Rodriguez. The spot that I like the most is Cody Stamann. He's my lock of the night, like I said. I think he's a great spot here. Askar has nothing for him. I would be absolutely stunned if we see Askar pull off the upset here. But I think Stamann absolutely lives up to his price tag, goes out there and wins this fight whichever way he wants. And even if it goes to a decision, I expect him to put up similar numbers like he did against Terrion Ware, where he put up 125 points. I'm expecting, 110 plus points here, at least, from Cody Stamann. So, yeah, he's my favorite play in the 9,000 range. All right, ending off the episode, we got my monkey knife fight tips. I'm going with Cody Stamann to land more than 48.5 significant strikes, and I'm going with Devonte Smith to land less than 48.5 significant strikes. I'm expecting either one of those guys to get knocked out, which is why we're not going to need 48 strikes. We'll have plenty of surplus there, but I don't expect that fight to go too long, and I think they're being very generous in terms of how many strikes they're expecting Devonte to land there. So yeah, I got Stamann over 48.5 and Devonte Smith less than 48.5. And that's the episode. Shout out again to the sponsor, Monkey Knife Fights. Promo code is UFC50. Link is in the description below. Make sure you guys check that out. And then make sure you check out all my stuff as well, too. Links are in the description below. Shout out to all the fellas. Appreciate you guys welcoming me with open arms. Hopefully, more of these plays will hit. Hopefully, the sleeper comes through. I mean, that would be nice. 2 weeks in a row. That would be great for sure. Shout out to my guy, Salvetri, for bringing me on once again. And let's keep this train moving, baby. I can't wait to keep these fights going on. We got 8 straight weekends, like I said, at the top of the show. 8 straight weekends of fights. So I'll see you guys next week. Again, you guys can check me out on my channel as well, MMALOTN. Check me out on Twitter at MMALOTN and on IG at MMALOTN. On behalf of myself and Salvetri, good luck this weekend, and I'll see you guys next week.